Patrick Mahomes has NFL fans completely stunned after reports suddenly linked him to a shocking move away from the Kansas City Chiefs and over to the Dallas Cowboys. Now people are starting to believe the Chiefs dynasty may finally be cracking behind the scenes. Let me catch you up. In the past few years, the word that had come up more and more to describe the Kansas City Chiefs was inevitable. Kansas City had played in the past 3 Super Bowls and the past 7 AFC Championship games, making the past 10 playoffs, a run that covered the entire Patrick Mahomes-Andy Reid era. Then the 2025 season happened. In the 2024 season, Mahomes had led the Chiefs to their 3rd straight Super Bowl, but they lost Super Bowl licks, falling short of a historic three-peat. Kansas City entered 2025 carrying the weight of that disappointment, still widely considered one of the most dangerous teams in football. But the cracks that had been forming for years finally broke wide open. The Chiefs struggled all season long with injuries, and Mahomes himself was far from his MVP-winning Super Bowl-level best. His 63.1 completion percentage was the lowest of his career as a starter. His 22 touchdowns were the fewest of his career, albeit with 3 games still to play. The 2025 season also marked his worst in passer rating and 2nd worst in quarterback rating of his career. Things were bad, and then they got worse. In an effort to rally the Chiefs, Mahomes scrambled out of the pocket, rolling to his right while he was chased down by defensive end Deshaun Hand. Once Mahomes planted his left foot and threw the ball away for an incompletion, his left knee buckled. After he fell to the turf, Mahomes immediately grabbed his left knee and winced in pain. The biggest blow came in mid-December, when quarterback Patrick Mahomes tore his ACL and LCL, ending his season and leaving Kansas City without its leader down the stretch. On the 5th snap after Mahomes exited, backup quarterback Gardner Minshew threw an ill-advised intermediate pass, intended for Kelsey, that was intercepted by Chargers safety Derwin James Jr., ending the Chiefs' comeback chances and their hopes of reaching the postseason for an 11th consecutive season, which would have tied the longest streak in NFL history. That is the moment that defined the 2025 Chiefs season. The streak, the playoff streak, the dynasty, the era of inevitability was over. On December 14, 2025, the Chiefs lost to the Los Angeles Chargers and were eliminated from playoff contention, marking the first time in Mahomes' NFL career that he would miss a postseason appearance. The Kansas City Chiefs finished deep into a roster reset after a disappointing 2025 season, in which they finished 6-11. That record is not a typo. 6 wins, 11 losses. From back-to-back Super Bowl champions to a team that could not find their way to the postseason. The contrast was jarring, but ESPN laid out the full picture clearly in a piece at the end of December, explaining that the collapse was painful but not entirely unexpected. After the game, the atmosphere inside the Chiefs' locker room was sorrowful. Many of the veterans knew their leader had suffered the worst injury of his 9-year career. "I just hugged him, man." Pass rusher Chris Jones said, "That's my brother. We've been through so much. We love Pat." Mahomes, who had been dealing with injury concerns related to the knee all season, apparently hyperextended the knee as he attempted to lead the Chiefs to a late comeback win. He lay on the turf at Arrowhead Stadium for several minutes as teammates knelt nearby, and then was helped to the locker room. "Don't know why this had to happen," Mahomes wrote on social media. "And not going to lie, it hurts. But all we can do now is trust in God and attack every single day over and over again. Thank you, Chiefs Kingdom, for always supporting me and for everyone who has reached out and sent prayers. I will be back stronger than ever." The fire in those words was not hard to believe. Mahomes had never quit on anything in his career, but the season and one of the most dominant runs in NFL history was done. It was a grueling situation as the Chiefs entered the offseason with negative $43 million in cap space to work with. The dynasty had not just fallen, it had left behind a financial mess. And within that mess, the conversation about Patrick Mahomes' future quietly began to take shape. Dallas Cowboys and New York Giants legend Chris Canty spoke on First Take about the Kansas City Chiefs and boldly proclaimed that their dynasty was over. He lambasted the Chiefs for not doing right by Patrick Mahomes and added that the next few years would expose just how weak their roster was if their front office did not react soon. Canty did not mince words on the broadcast. His exact words were striking. "The dynasty is done. The Chiefs as we know them are finished." I think this year highlights the malpractice that has gone on within that franchise over the last several years. The word malpractice is harsh, but when you look at the numbers, it is hard to argue against the sentiment. They have taken the greatness of Patrick Mahomes for granted, Canty continued. Over the last 3 years, no quarterback has been hit more on dropbacks than Patrick Mahomes. You mean to tell me your quarterback doesn't have any protection, reliable receivers, and you have no reliable running game to lean on? That last line is the thread that runs through the entire collapse. The Chiefs spent years building their organization around Mahomes' ability to make plays that should not be possible. Off-platform throws, escaping pressure, winning games in the fourth quarter through sheer improvisation. And for years it worked. But improvisation has a cost. Bodies absorb punishment, and the Chiefs never addressed the foundational issues that were forcing their quarterback to absorb that punishment every single Sunday. Finding a running game, including an offensive line that can protect Mahomes, was paramount. A big wide receiver was not far behind. The 2025 Chiefs were too reliant on Mahomes making plays. Perhaps not coincidentally, he was hurt trying to make a pass while scrambling. The defensive line could not rely on 32-year-old tackle Chris Jones for much longer either, especially with his $44.85 million cap hit the next season. Even before Mahomes' injury, the Chiefs were going to need to address several areas of their roster that offseason: a lackluster pass rush, a running game that lacked production, and a tight end group that might need to replace Travis Kelce if he retired. There is also the question of talent around Mahomes at wide receiver. A common theme in recent Chiefs seasons had revolved around a perceived lack of options at receiver. It was part of why DeAndre Hopkins ended up in Kansas City, a campaign in which the Chiefs also lost Rashee Rice to a knee injury and only saw Marquise Brown play in 2 games. Season after season, the Chiefs were walking a tightrope with receiver depth, an aging offensive line, and a defense that was held together increasingly by Chris Jones and not much else. The front office made it work, right up until the moment it did not. Mahomes had been left off the Pro Bowl roster for the 2nd consecutive season. Despite having a great year, impacting the Kansas City Chiefs offense in the air and on the ground, Mahomes completed 62.7% of his passes for 3,587 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. For context, those numbers would be career-defining for most quarterbacks. For Mahomes, they represented a regression. His 89.5 quarterback rating was 19th in the NFL and 9th among qualifying AFC QBs. And the most painful part of all of this, it was not entirely Mahomes' fault. The infrastructure around him had been eroding for years. Everyone who's in decision-making power in Kansas City needs to look themselves in the mirror, and they need to get serious about trying to do right by Patrick Mahomes, by fortifying that roster and putting a better supporting cast around him. Until they do, we will look at one of the greatest talents we've ever seen at the quarterback position in NFL history and wonder why he can't get back to the level we saw him at through the first 7 years of his career. Those are words from a former NFL player who has watched the game up close. And the context they provide matters because it sets the stage for exactly the kind of environment in which a franchise quarterback begins to look around and ask hard questions about his future. Should the Chiefs not add the right pieces around him? Mahomes could experience a mid-career slump like Tom Brady did. Between 2005 and 2015, Brady didn't win any Super Bowls and famously lost 2 to Eli Manning and the New York Giants. Could Mahomes suffer the same career fate as the man many consider his only rival in the GOAT debate? That question, whether the franchise has failed its quarterback, is the fuel behind every rumor, every speculation, and every conversation about Mahomes and his long-term future with Kansas City. Mahomes initially signed his 10-year, $450 million deal with the Chiefs in 2020, and it was the richest contract in North American team sports history at the time. That contract was celebrated as a statement of intent. Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs locked in together for a decade. But contracts in the NFL are rarely what they appear to be. The quarterback inked a massive 10-year, $450 million contract in July 2020. The deal was built to give the Chiefs flexibility throughout the contract. Restructuring the pact to push money into future years was always part of the plan. And restructure they did repeatedly. It marked the 4th consecutive year that Kansas City restructured Mahomes' contract. The Kansas City Chiefs restructured Patrick Mahomes' contract, creating much-needed salary cap space ahead of the 2026 season, according to ESPN and multiple reports. The Chiefs converted $54.45 million of Patrick Mahomes' 2026 salary into a signing bonus, creating $43.56 million in cap room. The restructuring, first reported by Over the Cap, converts $54.45 million of Mahomes' 2026 salary into a signing bonus and lowers the star quarterback's cap number to $34.65 million. The Chiefs, who missed the playoffs in 2025 after reaching the Super Bowl in each of the 3 previous seasons, created $43.65 million in cap space. What this means in plain language: Kansas City was so financially strangled by its own roster decisions that the only way to stay afloat going into 2026 was to push money down the road year after year, kicking the can into future seasons. The Chiefs entered the offseason more than $57 million over the cap and still needed to make further financial maneuvers after reworking Mahomes' deal. Think about that, over $57 million over the salary cap. That is not a small miscalculation. That is the result of years of financial decisions that prioritize the present at the direct expense of the future. While converting the salary into a signing bonus provides immediate assistance, Mahomes will account for an additional $11 million per season for the next 4 seasons. So every dollar the Chiefs freed up in 2026 comes at a price. A bigger bill landing in 2027, 2028, and beyond. Under the terms of the restructured deal, Mahomes now counts for an additional $11 million against Kansas City's cap each of the next 4 seasons, bringing his total cap number to $85 million for 2027. According to Over the Cap, $85 million in cap space for one player in 2027. For a team that is already rebuilding around an injured quarterback, the Chiefs restructured Mahomes' contract to lower his 2026 salary cap hit from approximately $78.2 million to $34.65 million, creating an estimated $43.56 million in cap space. That maneuver allowed them to then go after other roster moves, including releasing veterans. Taylor's departure saved significant cap room, $20 million in 2026, while leaving $7.4 million in dead money. A necessary move for Kansas City as it worked toward compliance before the new league year began. Taylor had been a key starter since signing a 4-year, $80 million contract with the Chiefs in March 2023. His release came alongside other cost-cutting moves in a Chiefs offseason marked by restructuring and veteran departures. Defensive end Mike Dana was released in February to clear cap space, and the team explored further adjustments to manage its financial position after finishing well over the projected salary cap. The picture being painted here is one of a franchise in a genuine financial and competitive crisis, and at the center of it all sits a 30-year-old quarterback recovering from a torn ACL and LCL. A 3-time Super Bowl MVP who is a potential candidate for a contract extension before 2028, when his salary and cap number both drop significantly. For now, however, the cap savings are vital to the Chiefs, who are coming off their first losing season in over a decade, and face decisions on multiple high-priced veteran players. The contract structure means one thing very clearly: Patrick Mahomes is not going anywhere soon, simply because the financial dead cap hit to release or trade him would be enormous. In 2026, Mahomes will earn a base salary of $1.3 million, a restructure bonus of $54.45 million, and a workout bonus of $106, while carrying a cap hit of $34.65 million and a dead cap value of $130.27 million. That dead cap number, over $130 million, is the number Kansas City would absorb if they ever tried to cut ties. No team in the NFL could stomach that kind of financial punishment. So when the Cowboys' name enters this conversation, it has nothing to do with a formal offer, a trade request, or a breakup already in motion. It has to do with something far more interesting: the idea that for the first time in his NFL career, the man who redefined what a Kansas City Chief looks like may be watching his empire crumble and wondering what comes next. The Dallas Cowboys and Patrick Mahomes have history, not between Mahomes and the organization directly, but in the broader story of how NFL franchises and franchise quarterbacks intersect. NBC Sports put together a breakdown of how, at one point years ago, there was a realistic scenario in which Mahomes could have ended up in Dallas. Mike Florio discussed the Cowboys' past interest in Paxton Lynch and explained how picking the former Memphis quarterback could have led Dallas to selecting Patrick Mahomes the following year. A different pick in a different draft, and the entire landscape of the NFL over the last decade looks completely different. Mahomes in Dallas, some other quarterback in Kansas City. That parallel universe conversation has always existed quietly in NFL circles, but it picked up new heat during and after the 2025 season collapse, specifically because of the Cowboys' own situation, and the prominent Cowboys voices who publicly called out the Chiefs' handling of their quarterback. Chris Canty, a man with 2 Super Bowl rings from his time with the New York Giants and a stint with the Cowboys, was the loudest voice in that conversation, and his words were not just criticism of Kansas City. They were implicitly a contrast. The idea buried inside his first take monologue was that Mahomes deserved better, that a quarterback of his caliber deserved an organization that would protect him, arm him properly, and build around his strengths rather than leaning on his greatness to paper over institutional failures. Patrick Mahomes was set to return near the start of the 2026 NFL season, with most experts earmarking September as the likeliest month. However, when he returned, he might be surrounded by some new figures on the Chiefs, as their roster was under heavy scrutiny. Longtime tight end Travis Kelce could decide to leave the Chiefs or retire, and other Chiefs players could be traded or let go the next summer. Should the Chiefs not add the right pieces around him, Mahomes could experience a mid-career slump like Tom Brady did. Mahomes and Kelce were the 2 most visible Chiefs players, and it was unclear how or whether either of them would enter the 2026 season. Kelce, who turned 36 in October, seemed likely to retire, a decision he said he would share before the start of free agency in March. Mahomes was obviously not going anywhere in the long term, but he would miss at least the offseason while recovering from ACL surgery. The dismantling of the core around Mahomes is exactly the kind of narrative that drives the Cowboys speculation. Dallas, despite their own struggles to reach deep in the playoffs in recent years, sits in the most valuable sports franchise market in America. Jerry Jones has never been shy about his desire to build a dynasty, and the idea of the most talented quarterback of his generation potentially becoming available at some future inflection point. When his contract restructures, when extension talks begin, when the Chiefs either rebuild successfully or fail to, is a conversation that will not go away. The similarities with Tom Brady and New England are obvious. Just like Mahomes, Brady, in the first game of the 2008 season, tore an ACL 9 years into his career, with 3 Super Bowls under his belt. Brady's injury was more significant in the moment. The Patriots were coming off a 16-0 regular season before losing in the Super Bowl. The Brady comparison cuts both ways. On one hand, it suggests that Mahomes, like Brady, can recover and return to elite play. On the other hand, Brady eventually left New England, the franchise he had built everything with, and won another Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. The lesson for every NFL observer is that dynasties end, stars move on, and when they do, it reshapes the league entirely. Despite the financial constraints, limited draft capital, and the evident flaws across the roster, the Chiefs still assess themselves as viable contenders the next season. The front office would not have made this dramatic decision if it believed that the team was not in a position to win meaningful games next season. The Chiefs, for their part, are betting on themselves. The contract restructure was not a white flag. It was a war chest. The front office is signaling that they believe in Mahomes' recovery and in their ability to build around him again. But the margin for error is gone. So here's the reality behind the title. Patrick Mahomes has not signed with the Dallas Cowboys. He has not left the Kansas City Chiefs. There is no trade, no request, no negotiation, and no formal link between Mahomes and Dallas at this point in time. What is true is far more layered and far more interesting than a clean transaction story. The Chiefs missed the playoffs in 2025 after reaching the Super Bowl in each of the 3 previous seasons. That collapse was real. Most notably, quarterback Patrick Mahomes suffered a torn ACL and LCL in mid-December, ending his year and leaving Kansas City without its leader during the final stretch of the season. His injury created uncertainty entering the 2026 season, though there was optimism he could play in Week 1. During an appearance on the Get Up program, ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter suggested that Mahomes was in a good place regarding his ongoing recovery. According to Schefter, there is a realistic chance that Mahomes will be in the lineup when the Chiefs open the 2026 regular season, with a Monday Night Football home game versus the rival Denver Broncos on September 14th. Schefter's update is hardly shocking, as Chiefs general manager Brett Veach recently said that Mahomes was way ahead of schedule in his recovery. A subsequent report noted that members of the coaching staff are telling some of their friends around the league that they are hopeful that Mahomes will be fully cleared early in training camp and on track to play a full season. If it were up to Patrick Mahomes, healthy or not, He would be running out of the tunnel to lead the offense for the Chiefs' Week 1 matchup against the Broncos. That is the Mahomes we have always known. The man who promised to attack every single day over and over again and vowed, "I will be back stronger than ever." If Mahomes' timeline did not seem realistic or behind schedule, there would be little to no reason for the team to restructure his contract. In fact, in that case, Kansas City would be better off creating cap space organically by releasing several veteran players. On the surface, the Chiefs could appear vulnerable heading into next season, but that is not how the star quarterback and organization view this situation. So what is the Cowboys' connection actually rooted in? It is rooted in the broader football conversation about what happens to a dynasty when it begins to age, when the infrastructure that supported greatness starts to crack, and whether the greatest player of his generation will stay loyal to a franchise that may or may not have done right by him, or eventually take his talents somewhere that can build a better team around him. After becoming the Chiefs' starting quarterback in 2018, Mahomes led the team to 7 consecutive AFC Championship game appearances and 5 Super Bowl appearances, winning 3. He is one of only 5 quarterbacks in NFL history to win 3 or more Super Bowls as a starter. Mahomes is widely regarded as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. A player like that does not become a free agent overnight. The dead cap value alone, over $130 million, makes a forced separation essentially impossible for the foreseeable future. The 3-time Super Bowl MVP is a potential candidate for a contract extension before 2028, when his salary and cap number both drop significantly. That 2028 window is when the real conversation about Mahomes' future begins. That is when the leverage shifts. That is when Kansas City either has to prove it has rebuilt the infrastructure around its quarterback, or face a future where the greatest player in franchise history walks out the door. The Kansas City Chiefs are on a mission to reclaim the NFL throne after losing to the Philadelphia Eagles at Super Bowl LIX and missing the playoffs in the 2025 season. And Mahomes is still very much part of that mission. Mahomes is 30 years old, comfortably in his prime. He likely has a lot of football left in him. The Chiefs should view him as something of a rookie again. They patiently sat him to learn and develop back then, and build out in order to best complement his talents going forward. The title of this video is provocative because the underlying story is provocative. The Kansas City Chiefs dynasty collapsed. Their franchise quarterback tore his ACL. Their roster was financially gutted. A Cowboys legend declared the dynasty done on national television. And the entire football world is now watching to see whether Kansas City can rebuild fast enough, or whether Patrick Mahomes will one day look back at this moment as the beginning of the end of his time in red and gold. He has not signed with the Cowboys. He has not left the Chiefs. But the conditions that would make that story possible, those are very, very real.